polite about that Tsar and that dress queen. And when the women walked in 1868 up and down these streets, just a pity some other king or queen didn't use their head. Anyway, so our next famous speaker is Lasair Dhearg, all over.
I want to start first of all, folks, by thanking everybody who joined us here today in the Conway Mill for what's our first Socialist Republican Conference. Today's meeting, which included both a closed and an open session, represents for us a significant advance for our small yet active organisation. Since our formation in late 2017 and having spent 2 full years laying the foundations of the project, we only opened up for new membership applications in late 2019. And it wasn't long before COVID lockdowns put a stop to many of our plans. But we adapted, like everyone else, and following the lifting of restrictions, we worked hard building campaigns, building networks, and building friendships with like-minded comrades across the country. The benefit of that has been large amounts of goodwill and support, and the fruits of those labours are represented here in this very room today, with many people travelling from across the country and the many more that couldn't make it. We're truly thankful for that support. Collectively, those that formed the project that eventually became Lasair Dhearg did so with the understanding that we would not win our liberation in this year or the next. It was our view that, currently, no amount of elections or other endeavours would create the necessary outcomes that our people so desperately need, so long as we were absent of a significant political base to bring it about. And so we believe that the immediate task facing republicanism is not necessarily socialism and liberation, but to rebuild the Republican base into the force that it once was so that it may achieve these objectives. The task at hand in our view is the rebuilding of republicanism. That is our project, and that is a task that we as an organisation are endeavouring to undertake. And it's not a task that we can complete on our own. Others must join us on that road, and we too must join others. Cooperation is a prerequisite, trust a requirement, and solidarity a necessity. In the coming years, all efforts must be taken to reinvigorate and revitalise the Republican base. That painstaking process must be undertaken with care and, above all else, credibility. Republicanism has always been the most radical trend on this island, and whilst an honest appraisal of it at present would lay bare the fractured nature of organising and the plethora of different organisations in one, there are silver linings. New opportunities present themselves. When undertaking this task of great significance, the Republican reconstruction, and in building the solid foundations for the future, we have the opportunity now to ensure that those foundations are truly socialist in character, so that every brick laid upon its base will be red as well as green, held together with a materialist understanding of the world that we live in, sheltered in the confidence of what can and what must be done, a home for Irish socialist republicanism, and that task begins today. This year marks 25 years since the signing of the Good Friday Agreement, an agreement rewritten to almost non-existence, but which creates the context within which we all now struggle. It is impossible to discuss the current state of Irish republicanism without discussing that agreement, or indeed the parties that signed it. Like many British border treaties, it sought to create conditions favourable to the British state and its interests here in Ireland. In the early 90s, if you'd have told the Irish people that in just a few short years they would see the surrender of the IRA leadership, the decommissioning of IRA weapons, the complete abandonment of many Republican principles, alongside support for British law and order, the PSNI and the criminalisation of Republicans, you could forgive their incredulity. They said then, 25 years ago, that this agreement was the start of a new era for the people of Ireland, that it was a day that we should all treasure, that it would hasten the end of violence and create new opportunities for the Irish people. We, the participants in the multi-party negotiations it read, believe the agreement that we've negotiated offers a truly historic opportunity for a new beginning. No one centre stage stopped the ask, a new beginning for who. Over 70% of those who voted during the referendum voted to support what they viewed as an end of violence, A sizable minority, however, voted against it, with many Republicans at the time, and even more since, taking up an anti-agreement position. They believed that the treaty would not bring about our liberation, now or in the future, and that it would only create an internal settlement, failing to resolve the core issues of occupation and capitalism, kicking the proverbial can down the road. 25 years have shown this to be the case, as Irish history repeats itself with another turn of the wheel. We have come full circle. Leaders in capitalism at the time said that there was a palpable sense of business confidence that as a region, the six counties was about to take off economically. And that it did. A recently published economic analysis indicates that the six counties' GDP, a measure of value of goods and services in the state, has more than doubled from 20 billion in 98 to more than 40 billion in 2020. One of the other most notable changes has been the growth of the private sector and the reduction in the region's traditional support for public sector jobs. Stormont political parties have gone as far as setting aside £700 million in order to make over 20,000 public sector workers redundant. 25 years of a Good Friday Agreement littered with political instability, and yet business and foreign direct investment is doing quite well. Strange then, as those same leaders of capital have said, clearly not everyone has felt these benefits, and we have far too many communities still living in deprivation. The communities they refer to are the vast majority of those resident in the six counties. This veneer of prosperity, as it was called by one of the big four accounting firms here, is a facade behind which lies 330,000 people, almost 1/5 of the population of the state, now living in poverty. 2/3 of homes in the six counties are in the state of state benefits, a figure that stands in stark contrast to the over 40 billion moving through the economy in 2020. Someone is doing very well, it would seem, but it isn't the more than 100,000 children now living in poverty. The children, I may add, who are subject to the daily horrors of deprivation, with the most deprived areas in the six counties having a suicide rate almost twice that of the least deprived areas. Neoliberal capitalist economics, wholly adopted as the ideological bedrock of the six county state by the five main political parties, has devastated communities. The evidence is overwhelming in that a significant correlation exists between social and environmental conditions and the prevalence of mental health issues. This, combined with a complete failure to deal with the trauma and horrors of occupation and war, means that when it comes to the six counties, mental health problems are the single largest cause of ill health and disability. The Stormont political parties that oversee this current calamity are not restricted in their delivery of misery to Irish people alone. They export that misery too, and they do so with bombs and with bullets. So-called supporters of international freedom struggles are heavily involved in jobs creation within the six counties' growing aerospace and defence industry. They, alongside their unionist colleagues, travel the world touting the benefits of producing weapons of war in the six counties and developing technologies for imperialist armies. Some notable examples include Tails Group, who are developing high explosive anti-tank missiles for the British Army, Harland and Wolff, assembling 3 new ships for Britain's naval fleet, and Kyocera ADX, who are supplying advanced components for fighter jets, attack drones, targeting systems, and more. These businesses are but a passing glance of the long list of businesses here involved in profiteering from imperialism, or that are part of a supply and logistics network for imperialist states, and who are now using the six counties as a base for their operations. The list of businesses that Lasair Dhearg activists have collated is a long one, with potentially hundreds of small, medium and large enterprises now contributing to Britain's military machine and global imperialism through supply, design and manufacture. Irish hands now develop and distribute intelligence systems, weapons, electronics, composites, explosives and other components which are daily designed and manufactured in the six counties and delivered directly into war zones to be used by military organisations with a long history of human rights violations. And the 26 county state is no different, as our research shows that significant players in the global defence industry have set up shop there. This is something that cannot be ignored any longer. Mainstream political parties across Ireland praise job creation in this industry and celebrate the supposed successes of high-end manufacturing without a second thought of the countless lives lost through imperialist wars worldwide. An interconnected web of war industry, weaved silently by the 6 and 26 county governments, now exists right beneath our noses, and in the coming months, Lasair Dhearg intends to expose it, business by business. From Britain's perspective, you could easily assume that the Good Friday Agreement was designed to achieve, and indeed, it did achieve many things. Bringing an end to the conflict allowed the opening up and development of new markets for British businesses. Infrastructure development post-conflict has allowed the transition of vast amounts of public funds into the hands of private businesses. City centre development, high-rise buildings and empty office blocks flourish. The housing market expanded and housing prices rose significantly alongside the sale of public housing via neoliberal Thatcherite housing policies, creating a mammoth private rental economy and a burgeoning landlord class, just like the 26 counties. Republicans, turned constitutional nationalists, have been wholly subsumed into the political cul-de-sac they call Stormont, forever caught up in the sectarian carve-up of a failed statehood destined for instability. The occupation continues with a large garrison, a scaled-down infrastructure, and a beefed-up intelligence network, enough to pacify the people. The British managed to convince those in control of the Republican movement to hand over the vast bulk of its weaponry and ordnance to the enemy. That arsenal, assembled over many years by IRA volunteers and at significant cost to life and liberty, was destroyed. The frontline force that those weapons were once aimed at are now wholly supported by the leadership of that same movement, not just in terms of practical advice, but in recruitment and in intelligence. They too now criminalise the Republican struggle, calling for information to be passed to the PSNI and supporting both British courts and prison systems in Ireland. From a British perspective, the Good Friday Agreement had effectively achieved all of its objectives of authorisation, normalisation and criminalisation in one fell swoop. And Sinn Féin would no longer stand as a major barrier to those objectives. Instead, they would do it for them. A masterstroke in British manoeuvring. Sinn Féin's tenure as the poster child of post-conflict democracy has been overshadowed by the constant failure of that supposed democracy to remain standing. In the quarter of a century since the signing of the Good Friday Agreement, Stormont has collapsed no less than 6 times, leaving the state with no devolved government for almost 10 years in total. A new generation has been born into a so-called post-conflict society, absent of the ravages of war, but experiencing the horrors of something else not wholly unexpected: unbridled capitalism. They say that the Good Friday Agreement brought an end to violence. It didn't. It was an attempt by the British state to end the violence directed at its presence in Ireland. The violence of homelessness, mental illness, addiction, suicide, plastic bullets, access to healthcare, abject poverty and more was allowed to continue for the rest of us. Let me state emphatically that 25 years of the peace process was an outstanding success for the interests of capital and the British state, and an exceptional failure for the rest of us. Do we condemn subsequent generations over the next 25 years to the same fate? Or when we reach the 50th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, will we have used those intervening years to advance new strategies and build new movements in the fight for socialism and liberation in Ireland? That's a question that you get the answer. In the coming year, as Lasair Dhearg solidifies its base in the 6 counties, our membership will be seeking expansion in the 26 counties. Our small base of membership there are organising in a state with conditions not too dissimilar to this one. The contradictions in capitalism, alongside the absence of a strong Socialist Republican alternative across this island, creates the space for the rise of fascist rhetoric, hate and division. Great work is being carried out by many organisations out and wide. A unity of ideas exists, absent of the cooperation so desperately needed. Irish Socialist Republicans must now commit to a unity of purpose. The issues we face, north and south, are as a result of the economic systems imposed upon us. And though one wears a crown and the other a shamrock, we face the same enemy. As Irish history repeats itself, clear as day for all to see, some will remain observers of the farce that it is, and others will decide that simply observing is not enough. The final conclave has not yet arrived, and for our part, we are not content to be mere witnesses to history. We intend to be participants. To paraphrase a great Argentine revolutionary, we intend to live magnificent days. Our island, Michaela, Biggie Lynn.